Hi, welcome to another edition of this week's the People Progressing podcast. And I have a former Navy SEAL, Phillip Koontz, on, who I've gotten to know. Luckily, I've gotten to know, and he's been a mentor of mine in the speaking world and in my life in general. It's just been fun to get to know him and see how he ticks. It's pretty amazing to listen to Phillip tell stories and about training and in buds and all that stuff. So Phillip, I welcome you to be on our podcast today. It's going to help so many people. And I'm just going to start out by saying, Phillip, where did you grow up and what are some of the things that you like to do as a kid growing up and so forth?
Yeah. So thanks, Joe, for having me on. And I grew up in the Midwest. So I'm a good old Midwest farm boy, corn-fed farm boy. All my family's pretty much in Ohio. I grew up in Cincinnati for about 18 years, born and raised right there. And man, growing up, I loved, just hearing you say that, the first thing that came to my mind was I loved building a lot of weapons. It doesn't matter if they were like nunchucks or Chinese stars or bow staffs or knives or whatever it was. I built lots of weapons, and I was the weird kid in school that would like show up in my camouflage uniform, and dressed. They called me G.I. Joe. And, at the time I'm like, wait, is that an insult? But now I'm like, oh, that's cool, 40, like what, 35 years later. So yeah, I was definitely on the go, explored a lot, made lots of forts, and we were around some woods, and so I'd tramps around with my buddies, and it was a good time, but it was never a dull moment for me.
And then as you went into high school, you played some sports in high school. Is that true? That if I remember right, you telling me?
Yeah, growing up, I did baseball and soccer and some taekwondo. But at the age of 12, I started to swim, and for whatever reason, uh, it stuck with me. So it's funny too, because I'm like the world's most extroverted person, and I picked swimming, which is like the most introverted sport that there is. So yeah, so I started swimming at the age of 12, all the way through college.
And
So
then
it was, yeah. So that water, that comfortability in the water, and that, really what it taught me, that hard work ethic and determination and perseverance was huge.
and I remember you telling me one time that the two sports that most SEALs participated in was wrestling and swimming. Is that, do I got that right?
Yep. Yeah. Ever since I talk about this in my book, but ever since the Bush senior administration, from the top down, from the president down, they're like, hey, we got to get more guys through SF. So they poured millions of dollars into this sociological study. And it was based just to see, like what it took, to become a SEAL, and where do we get these guys and how do we recruit them? And so basically they found out the general area of the country that a lot of SEALs come from. And then, yeah, those two sports, which were swimming and wrestling, which are what the majority of guys who make it through, they had some sort of like a swimming or wrestling kind of background.
And then you went to college before you went into the Navy. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. I swam for University of Toledo. I transferred then to Miami of Ohio, and that's where I got my marketing degree. I was in corporate America for a little while, and then just figured out that corporate America was not for me. So I was like, one of the few things I've ever quit in my life was corporate America. So it got the best of me. And I thought, I'm too high strung. I'm not wired right now. I was 23 years old at the time. It wasn't a good fit for me at the time. So I decided to punch out and join the Navy.
Wow. So had you thought about that before you got into the corporate world, or is that just something that kind of came to you as you were on the job site working in the corporate world, and all of a sudden it's just like, this isn't for me, I got to go do something greater? Or was that something that was in the back of your mind before that happened?
Yeah, kind of both. I was influenced, by my parents to get a marketing degree, and wanted to eventually kind of get into sales. I knew I was, fairly good at that. But once I was in that environment, though, I figured out very quickly that it just wasn't for me. And like I said, growing up, I was always enamored with like weapons and special forces, and would like watch the movies and stuff and read the books. And so, that was always kind of in the back of my mind. And I think everything came to a head once I figured out, okay, corporate America isn't for me. I can check that off the list. And what's next? And I thought, let me go SF. Let me see if I can go and become an SF. So I actually went over to the Army side first, and they said, yeah, you need to do 2 years in the infantry before you can even qualify to go through the Q course. And being a cocky college grad, I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to go right in. And so I went over across the hall to the Navy side, and they waved $8,000 in front of my face and said, hey, if you join up, we'll give you $8,000 for already having a degree, and you can go right into buds, and you don't have to wait at all. So I thought, yeah, and the whole swimming thing and the water, background and the comfortability, I thought was a good fit.
So you went right from the corporate world, really right into buds training.
Yep. Yeah. There's a
Wow.
period of time there where I was training some, and I was a shift supervisor at Starbucks. I got a job just to pay the bills, and was training, and pretty much I shipped out March 24th of 2004. So I trained for a few months in between there, but pretty much went from corporate world right into the military.
So you didn't even do like a boot camp, like a normal boot camp going into the Navy. You went right into buds.
No, I did. I went to boot camp. Yeah,
Okay.
everybody who wants to be a SEAL, they all have to go through Great Lakes and go through the Navy's boot camp there for about 7 months. And then when I went in, it's different now, but when I went in, you actually had to pick a rate in the Navy. So I picked a rate as a PR, a parachute rigger, because for 2 reasons. One is it had a $3,000 sign-on bonus, which was great. And the reason why it had a sign-on bonus is because nobody wanted that rate. So I was basically stuck behind a sewing machine repairing parachutes for my entire time there. The one good thing, though, is that it was in Pensacola, Florida. So I got to hang out there in Florida for about 8 weeks doing my A school, and then I went to buds. So now you don't pick a rate. You just go from boot camp and then right into buds.
Okay. So now let's dive into mindset here, because this is, again, this is a people progressing podcast, and I want people to get the kind of mindset you have to overcome. And you get into buds. What was it like when you first showed up at buds? What was your mindset?
Yeah. So when I showed up, I was married, and I had told my wife, I said, I'd rather die than quit. That's pretty much my MO at the time. And little did I know at that time that she would be diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer 6 months later, while I was actually going through the training.
Wow.
But we didn't have kids together, and so for me, I didn't want, not to sound cliche, but I didn't even want to give myself the option to quit, and so I said, and I'm a man of faith anyways. And so I thought, well, it's probably a pretty good deal, rather die than quit kind of mentality. Because if I did die, then I meet Jesus, right? And if I don't die, I become a Navy SEAL, right? So it's kind of a win-win for me. But yeah, I mean, I think in life, and this applies to me and you and everyone listening to this podcast right now, that in life, if we give ourselves an out, if we give ourselves the option to quit and just crack that door just a little bit, 99% of the time we're going to walk through it. We're going to walk through that door and find ourselves making decisions that we regret later on. So I just wanted to not even open that door. I didn't even want to give myself the option to quit, even when things got really hard, which they definitely did.
So take us through a typical day at buds. Your first part of buds is a certain thing, and then you go into other different types of training and so forth. Give us a typical day of buds.
Yeah. So on average, so just backing up a little bit, buds is 6 months long, and it's divided into 3 phases. So each phase is 2 months. And the first phase is where the majority of the attrition rate happens. So the first 2 months, I tell people all the time, buds is like a kick in the nuts every day, right? So I don't know how PC I need to be in
No,
this
you're good.
podcast,
You're good. You're
but
good.
yeah, I mean, it's a punch in the stomach every day, figuratively. So my buds class 254, we started with 223 guys and finished with 21.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and the attrition rate really, it's about 80 to 90%, depending on what time of the year you go through and how cold the Pacific is. That cold water is usually what gets guys the most. But typical day, we wake up around 4:00, 0400 in the morning, and then we're just going all throughout the day. And usually the day's secured around I'd say like 7:00 at night. And I was married at the time. So this is different now too, but officers and married guys actually could live off base. So I'd drive back home and my wife, bless her heart, she'd like rub my feet for about an hour. And I was out within 5 minutes. I mean, I was done. I was sleeping. And it was definitely because of her. I'm convinced that I made it through. So yeah, it's nothing but just running and gunning all day long. Physical evolutions, log PT, surf torture, getting wet and sandy, rope climbs, a lot of calisthenics, push-up, hundreds, thousands of push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, races. Whatever they can concoct is what we have to do. And we're constantly wet, constantly sandy. So they call us sugar cookies in buds. So they tell us to go get wet and sandy, so we go and jump in the ocean, get completely wet, and then get out and roll around in the sand till we've got sand covered from the head to toe. And so yeah, they call us sugar cookies.
So again, the mental aspect of that, I know the physical has got to be just unbelievable. But what separates a guy who makes it and doesn't make it? Is that a fair question to ask you?
Yeah, it's a question I get asked a lot. Is buds more mental? Is it more physical? And I'd say buds is 80% mental and 20% physical. And I use those percentages because buds is designed to break you down. It will break any human being down. I don't care how good of condition that you're in when you first get in. Your body will break down. And that's when the instructors want to see that you've got what it takes between your two ears to keep going. So, just a lot of grit, a lot of competition. I mean, every time I heard that bell ring, people would DOR, drop on request. They'd ring the bell 3 times, and I heard that bell ringing a lot. And I just remember saying to myself, well, I made it past one other guy, just one more guy. But I think it really, it boils down to determination, to grit, and the ability to compartmentalize. There's times in my training where I just really had to turn my mind off, because oftentimes our mind is our worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Our thoughts, our thought life can be pretty devastating at times. And so for me, I just turned my mind off, and I was basically just like a dog. I mean, I sat when I was told to sit, fetch and all that. I mean, I did what I was told to do. And you have to compartmentalize the pain, and know that the light is at the end of the tunnel. It's not going to last forever. And I found myself breaking my day into smaller goals for me to be able to just handle it, mentally. So I just, certain days when I woke up, looking at the whole day in its entirety was too much for me. So I'd break down my day, and I would just make it to breakfast. That was my first goal, just make it to breakfast, and then just make it to lunch. And then once I made it to lunch, just make it to dinner,
Yeah.
right? And then just make it to mid rations around 3:00 in the morning. So, it's just that mentality of go, 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 don't quit, grit, stick it through. And of course, my faith played a big role in that as well too. And I told myself, the Lord suffered far more than I am right now. And I just knew that whatever they threw at me, that I'd be able to take it. And like I said, like I wasn't dead, my heart was still beating. So I was still going.
It's an amazing, and to use the Lord as your guidance there, really. I think a lot of people miss out on that. I think
Yeah.
they forget what he went through for us,
Yep.
and that really helped you get through buds. It helped you get through this training.
Yep.
And so the second phase of buds is what? Is that
Yeah.
more
So
as teamwork type stuff?
yeah, it's all teamwork. Ever from day one, day one, week one, they instill teamwork in us. Second phase is more about diving, though. So they teach us two breathing apparatuses. One is scuba, which most people are familiar with, and then the other one is the Draeger system. So scuba is great and everything, and that's where we first get our feet wet, pun intended, is with the scuba gear. But then in the teams, we use something called a Draeger system, which is a rebreather that doesn't emit any bubbles. So it's a lot more clandestine under the water. So second phase is all about diving, still equally as grueling physically though as first phase, and sometimes even more so. I remember the worst beating that we got was actually in second phase. We had to do 500 8-count bodybuilders in a pretty small room, and at that time our class size was about 40 guys, and I mean there was like condensation just pouring off the walls, from us, and it took us about 4 hours to do, but it was rough. And then third phase, the last 2 months of training is about land warfare. So we get to, shoot some pistols, pick up some rifles for the first time. We become familiar with explosives and doing some land navigation and field training exercises and things like that. But and then half the time on third phase, half the time is spent right there on San Clemente Island, where we really put in a lot of those skills into practice. So yeah, 6 months. Buds is 6 months, and it's challenging. It tests you in every single phase.
How important is your boat crew? Tell us a little bit about your boat crew.
Yeah, boat crew is extremely important. So a boat crew is they line all of us guys up, and depending on your height, each boat crew will have about 6 guys per boat crew, and those are the guys that are cheering you on. You're cheering them on. In Hell Week, I remember we were going through the longest evolution in buds is called the Around the World Tour, where we paddle and run for about 81 miles around the San Diego Bay area with the boats on our head, and we're paddling. It's in Hell Week, and so Hell Week is where we go 5.5 days without any sleep at all. So we're sleep deprived and hallucinating. And at the very beginning of the Around the World Tour, it was in the middle of the night, and we started. And I remember about 200 yards down the beach as we were running, I heard and felt a snap in my leg, and it was my IT band. I had ripped my IT band on my right leg, and I immediately went down. And it's like one of those moments where everything like slows down, in a slow
Yeah.
motion, and you see kind of like your career flash before your eyes. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this can't be the end. And luckily it wasn't. My boat crew, they helped me. They came and picked me up, and I was nursing it for a little bit. And I mean, it was nothing short of a miracle in my mind, because I was able to make it through. I think the cold water definitely helped kind of keep it numb and the inflammation down. But yeah, I mean, I've relied on my boat crew tremendously throughout buds to be able to help me and me help them as well too.
It's so cool. And then once you're done with buds, go through a little bit. What happened after that? I know you had some deployments and so forth, and I know you can't talk about the missions and so forth, but when you went into after buds, what was, first of all, what was the feeling after you made it through buds? Personally, what was your feeling?
Yeah. Hey, real quick, before I do that, I was thinking too, it's really interesting. So the attrition rate that I said about 80 to
Yeah.
90% is for the enlisted guys. So
Wow.
in your boat crew, you'll have about 5 guys that are enlisted, and then you'll have an officer that's in charge of that boat crew.
Okay.
But the interesting thing, though, is that the attrition rate among officers is around 50 to 60%.
Wow.
And this is for a couple of reasons. One is that they're older, they have a little bit more life experience. But the biggest contributing factor to that lower attrition rate is the fact that they are not so self-centered and so self-focused. that they are in charge of the other guys that are in their boat crew. And I think this is a wonderful leadership perspective and
Yeah.
lesson as well too, because when we are going through times of adversity, when we're going through the hardships of our life, and the only thing that we can see is our problems. It's like if you hold up a penny, and you hold it at arm's length, it doesn't look so bad. But as that penny gets closer and closer to your face, that's all you can see is this penny. And when all you can see are your problems and everything that's going wrong, it has a tendency to amplify that
Hmm.
problem and,
Yeah.
and sometimes consume us, right? And so
Right.
that's why the attrition rate is higher for the enlisted, because as the enlisted guy, you're really only in charge of yourself, and that's it. But for those boat crew leaders, the officers, they're in charge of all of us, right?
Right.
And so their eyes aren't as focused inwardly on themselves, but they're more concerned with how the guys are doing and their state of mind and their physical condition. So that's a really powerful lesson, I think, too, that's worth noting.
Oh, it's huge. Because I always say that you can find your purpose when your purpose is greater than yourself.
Yep.
And that's exactly what you're saying there is those guys are trying to serve others in that situation. When they serve others, they're not really focused on themselves. They're helping others get through it
Yep.
is what's getting them through it. And it gives
Right.
them a greater satisfaction as well as they're going through. Wow, that is powerful. That is
Yep. I
really
love
powerful.
Yeah, I love servant leadership. That's probably
Oh,
I've
it's
got my
awesome.
master I've got my master's in leadership, and that's the one leadership method that I like the most, is that servant leadership kind of
Wow.
mentality in that leadership method. So yeah,
Powerful, powerful. I
yep.
told you guys, if you listen to this, it's going to change your life. This is awesome. So when you made it
So
through,
yeah,
Philip, when you made it through, what was the feeling inside of you? Self
yeah.
confidence, accomplishment. What was it?
Oh, for sure. So right after BUDS is something called SQT, which stands for SEAL Qualification Training, and that's an additional 6 months held right there in Coronado, California, really to take the skills that we learned from BUDS and to fine tune those skills to really prepare us then to get to a team. So right after SQT is when we're pinned our trident, and our trident is our military insignia that distinguishes us from different branches of the military. And so once you're pinned your trident, that's when you're officially a Navy SEAL. And I didn't even realize this, but I came prepared. I actually had the very first trident that I was ever pinned
That's awesome.
right here. So we like to call this our bird or our Budweiser. That's our nicknames for our trident. So yeah, I mean, just you're on top of the world. I mean, it's cloud nine, right? I mean, you made it through training. You still know that you're really at the very, very beginning of the process of being a SEAL. But having BUDS and SQT behind you is man, it's such a relief to know that all of that's behind you and you don't have to go back, and do it again. So
What a
huge.
it had to be such a feeling of self satisfaction to know that you got through that. And you mentioned the word before, and I have a saying it's fear regret. I always used to tell my players when you're done playing or when you're done doing whatever you want or doing, that you have no regret, that you gave everything you had to the process of being the best you can be in that situation. And if you don't give everything you have and you feel like you didn't give everything you have, that's going to set up regret later on in your life. So I always tell them to fear that regret, fear regret, so you work as hard as you can.
Yep.
And you mentioned that regret. I just kind of, and you probably can't even answer this, but how much regret do you think those guys have that ring the bell?
Well, funny that you say that, because um, there was a documentary that was done a little while ago, and they highlighted three characteristics of these guys that quit. Uh, the first one is relief, right? Because when we give in to the temporary pain that we're feeling, when we give into that pain, of course, there's a sense of relief. But then after that came shame and regret, and so those guys feel a great amount of shame just for quitting and giving up on their dreams of becoming a Navy SEAL. And then that shame then turns into regret, just wanting to, go back. And so BUDS, they if you quit, they send you back to the fleet for 2 years. And after those 2 years, you're allowed to come back and try BUDS again. And some
Oh,
guys make it. Yeah, some guys make it. about 50%, I think, who come back again, after having some experience and being able to reflect on, why they quit, and having some deeper self-reflection. About 50% of them make it, but then 50% quit again. And then once you quit buds twice, then you're not allowed to come back. But yeah, that regret is very powerful.
And have you ever talked to somebody who's going through that, who's gone through
Uh,
quitting?
I have a little bit, but not recently. I had some friends that quit, and at the time they're just like, what? I realized that it just wasn't for me, and that's great. I mean, that's fine. Like sometimes you don't really know until you're actually in it and doing it, and you're like, yeah, it's just I'm not cut out for this.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of them felt, yeah. I mean, guys are on suicide watch, so when they quit, they have somebody there with them, and they go see the command psychologist and counselors and stuff, and it's a pretty low feeling, low time of their life when they do that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to talk to them and just see how they overcame that part of it too,
Yep.
right? Because that's something you got to overcome as well. Now let's go. So you get deployed a couple times. We can't really talk much about that, but was that how long was that you were an active SEAL, that you were actually getting deployed and so forth?
Yeah, so I was in for about 6 years until I got out. I was honorably discharged in 2009, and I got out for family reasons. I had a family and kids, and being a Navy SEAL, or a team guy is what we say. So being a team guy and a dad, it's just like oil and water. They don't mix. You can't be a good SEAL or team guy and be a good dad at the same time.
Mhm.
And growing up with the value system that I had, I knew that. I mean, talk about regret. I knew that if I stayed in for my 20 plus years, if I was a lifer, is what we call them, if I stayed in, I just knew that I would regret it. Later on down the road, I wanted my kids to know who I was, and to have, to be there for them, to be present for them. And I'm not discounting the guys that stay in, and have families, because some of them make it work. I think it just depends on who you're married to, and um, your goals and your value system as well too. But for me, I knew that I wanted to be there for my kids, and I wanted to be present, and I wanted to be a father that was in the mix. So I got out for family reasons in 2009.
And let's talk a little bit about what you did after that. I don't know if I don't know if there's anybody else who's ever gone the path that you went to after becoming a SEAL. What did you do after you uh, got discharged, or honorably discharged? I'm sorry.
Yep. Yep. No, you're good. So I was a contractor for a little while, and the attrition rate in the SEAL teams is about, I'd say about 50% of the guys. They usually get out after their first enlistment period. So after about 4 years, they get out to become contractors, because they realize that they can make like 3 times more money doing the exact same thing as a SEAL, that they, in the contract world, as they did when they were active duty. So a lot of guys get out and become contractors. So I was a contractor for about a year and a half. I was at Fort Bragg teaching the Green Beret SSC, or sensitive site exploitation. And just so we're clear, it's the Navy SEALs who teach the Green Beret, right? Not the other way around. So I got to get my digs in where I can. Right? But so I was on Fort Bragg right there in North Carolina for about a year and a half, teaching SSC, and then the door opened for me to actually move back to Cincinnati and become a pastor. And so my dad was involved with the Vineyard Church right there in Cincinnati. And they had an opening as a community life pastor, a pastor like over small groups. And so I was like, yeah, I think that I'd be a good fit for that. And so I applied for the job, and initially they came back and said, yeah, no, thanks for applying, but we're going to go with another direction. And little did I know, they had the candidate that he had like 30 years of ministry experience and he had his doctoral degree, and it just blew me out of the water on paper. But I still felt like, it was a good fit. So, I kept praying about it, and they called me about 2 weeks later and said, you know what? we actually are going to give you a shot. We think that maybe getting somebody in here with your background that hasn't been inundated with a bunch of, ministry experience might be a good breath of fresh air for us. So that's when, we moved back. I got the job, moved back to Cincinnati, was a pastor there for a couple of years, and then transferred out to Colorado, to Aurora, Colorado, where I was a community life pastor at the Smoky Hill Vineyard, just right up the street from me here in Aurora.
That's so cool. It's so cool. Now, let's
And
go.
some people, sorry, not to cut you off, but
No, you're good.
some people are like, they're like scratching their heads, like, how did you go from being a Navy SEAL to a pastor? Like, how does that even correlate? And I'm like, well, it does seem kind of odd until you look at it. And I really think that God took me out of the physical fight and put me in the spiritual fight. And so he removed me from the military, and I've been to some of the darkest places on the planet and have stared evil in the face, and I get spiritual warfare on a whole nother level than a lot of people do, just because I've been there. I've seen it. So I think that it was simply God just plucking me from the physical fight and putting me in the spiritual fight, which obviously we all know is far more costly. The enemy is constantly trying to win that fight for our souls, and so it was a good fit for me. Yes. It was, and very, very rewarding as well too. It was good, because a lot of guys that get out of the military, they're struggling, and I struggled a little bit as well too, down the road. But a lot of guys, they just lack purpose, and their identity is so wrapped up in being in the military, being a soldier, that they're just not real sure who they are anymore, and so I think that gave me a lot of purpose, still in having my identity rooted and grounded in the Lord was really helpful.
Well, and I think we'll get into this maybe a little bit later, but your purpose in serving people.
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the reasons, and again, I'm not speaking for you, but I think it's probably one of the reasons you got out of the corporate world, because you didn't feel like you were really serving people and helping people. So what did you have to do? You had to get into something that you could serve people. You served us, you served me, you served our country.
Yeah.
And then you got out of that, and what'd you do? You served more Green Berets, and you served those people. And then what'd you do after that? You got out and you served, through your ministry. And that's just kind of the heart that you have. And it's such a great story. And now let's transition to what you're doing now. I know you wrote a book, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your book and what it's called, where people can get it, because I want people to get it and read it, because it's an unbelievable book to read, and it can really inspire you once you read it. So please tell us what the name of your book is, where you get it, and so forth.
Sure. So my book is titled "The Truth Behind My Trident," and it's available on Kindle, on audio, Amazon, all those avenues. And Hollywood does a really good job of portraying the missions of the SEALs, with all the movies that came out, and they do a pretty good job, almost too good of a job. I'm like, you guys realize Americans aren't the only ones watching these, right? And they've got, live SEALs there helping them with like standard operating procedures and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, Hollywood does a great job of portraying the life of SEALs. But I actually calculated it out, and that's only 3%. 3% of our time is spent boots on the ground conducting our missions. So what my book does is I want to pull back the curtain and show, what the average day in the life of a Navy SEAL really looks like. It's kind of like the book that I wish I would have read going in. It wouldn't have changed my mind at all, but it would have given me a clear view of what I was getting myself into in the teams. So again, it's called "The Truth Behind My Trident," and it's been out for a number of years now.
It's really good. And let's give a shout out to Beth.
Yeah. Beth was my ghostwriter. So she helped me, and I had just finished my master's degree, and in leadership, and I was done reading, I was done writing, I was like writing fatigue, so the thought of writing a book at that point was like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to do this. So I found Beth. She was a friend of a friend, and we connected and worked really well together. And I would dictate stories and stuff to her and give her pretty much the meat of everything, and then she would make it more palatable for people.
Yeah,
So she did a great job.
she's pretty awesome. Beth Tranquiti she's my writing coach right now. I'm trying to write a second book, and because that's how you and I got connected. So I wanted to give a shout out to Beth. Now let's go into what you're also doing with your speaking. What are some of the programs that you can come and speak to groups, businesses? I know you got a speaking engagement
Yep.
with Mass Mutual today and so forth. What are some of the things that people can hire you to speak on, and what are the topics?
Yep. So I've been a life coach and a public speaker now for about 6 years, and I've got 4 presentations. One's on self-defense. One's a lot of fun. The other one is overcoming adversity. My third one is prepared for the unknown, and then I've got one on leadership as well too, called 3-dimensional leadership. And Joe, I talk to sports teams, I talk to Boy Scout troops, I talk to high schools, middle schools, I talk in the business world. I've done hundreds of webinars ever since the coronavirus
Yeah.
or pandemic hit about a year ago. Yeah, I mean, really, kind of anyone and everyone. I speak to, and I love speaking to kids. Really, because I can identify with them and some of the struggles that I went through when I was their age, and what they're going through right now as well too. Specifically as it relates to identity and fitting in, and just really being sure of yourself, if that makes sense. So. But yeah, I've been doing it for about 6 years, and it's been going great. So I really enjoyed it, and like you said, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I really do get a lot of fulfillment and enjoyment out of challenging people, motivating them, helping them become the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's why I stepped into life coaching as well too. So
Well, I'll pat you on the back because Philip, I'm lucky because Philip lets me get on a lot of his presentations, and I will tell everyone listening to this that you're missing out if you don't hire him. His presentations are life-changing, and he can really help you. So I will pat you on the back for that for sure. Give me a sample, Philip. Give me a sample of your overcoming adversity talk.
yeah, so overcoming adversity, I talk about 5 characteristics that really have helped influence me when I was going through training and my time in the SEAL teams, all the way till today. I talk about 5 of those characteristics that really helped me to overcome adversity. The first one is the power of preparation and really preparing ourselves for the unknown. The second one is positivity, and how positivity, this positive mindset, is actually a learned behavior, and how to become more of a positive person. The third one is perseverance, and the power of perseverance, and just the perspective that perseverance gives us. The fourth one is your pack, or who we choose to surround ourselves with, our community, our friends, our colleagues, and how important how much we need each other in times of adversity. And then the last one is progress, and the role that progress plays in really being able to overcome adversity, even in the midst of failure, even when we're making mistakes. The power that progress can play in helping to continue to motivate us, and just taking one step at a time.
And that's why the name of this podcast is People Progressing Podcast. And
Yep.
it's so important that people learn from the adversity that they're going through. I call it list and learn. List out what you want to what you got from that experience, and then learn from those experiences that you had to go through. It's awesome stuff. And I don't want to hold you too long, but I just want to thank you for coming on. Um, it's life changing when you get to meet somebody with the mindset to overcome, because everything you talked about today was having to overcome. Because I can guarantee you, and tell me if I'm wrong, but when you're going through buds, how many times was your mind telling you, I'm done, I can't do this, I'm done? Did that ever happen to you when you were going through
Yeah.
those difficult times? And
Yeah.
how did you overcome those thoughts and that self-talk coming into you, that negative self-talk that's beating you down like that. Just give
Yeah.
us a quick sample of how you overcame that.
Sure. So yeah, I was tempted to quit a lot. Just like I'm tempted in life right now to quit and to take the easy way out, or to cut corners. So I've got the five the 5 S's that I follow, and I do this with myself, and I teach my clients this as well too. So every time that temptation comes to quit, or that temptation comes to cope, in an unhealthy way, the first S is to spot it, is to spot that temptation, or to spot that negative thought that we want to entertain, to spot it. The second one is to stop that thought. And I actually picture a stop sign, and I say it out loud. I'm like,
Yeah.
nope, stop. So you stop that thought from progressing and going too far down that road of destruction. And then the third S is you stand against that negative thought. And how I do that is I quote scripture, and we're given a beautiful example of that in the Bible, when Jesus is tempted as well too. And he combats the enemy by quoting scripture. So you stand firm, you stand your ground against that negative thought that's trying to prevail. And then the fourth S is substitute. You substitute that negative thought with a positive thought. So whatever that negative thought is, you substitute it with the counter thought
Mhm.
of positivity, of the truth. And then the fifth S is you seek help from your accountability, from your brothers and sisters that are around you, that love you, that you can be transparent with, and really rely on during hard times.
It's so powerful. So powerful. Last 3 questions into real quick. What's your purpose in life?
Hmm. My purpose in life is to influence everyone around me the best that I can, to help them to become better versions of themselves, as I myself strive to be that person as well.
What's your passion in life?
My passion is being a follower of Christ, being the best husband that I can be, and being a rock star dad.
And what is your perspective on life? And you've had so many different experiences, but this is going to be awesome. What's your perspective on life?
My perspective on life is that hardships never last forever, and if we are able to just take it one day at a time, I mean, as far as perspective goes, one person, like whenever you're tempted to be like, I'm just one person, I can't really do much, I'm just one person in this sea of people out here, out of 7 billion people, what good can I do? You can actually do a lot of good, but you never know how much good you can do until you actually go and do it. So choose the next best thing, choose the next right thing, and learn, like you said before, learn from our mistakes, and just keep going and see how much of a positive impact you can have on those people around you.
Man, this has been awesome. I know you got to get ready for your presentation, but uh, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I know this is going to help and inspire people. Hopefully, you'll get more people on your website. How do they get on your website, Philip, real quick?
Yeah, it's just my name, Phil Koontz. So PhilKoontz, philkoontz.com.
Okay. And they can get how to order your book and how to get you to speak with their group and all that kind of stuff from your website. So I just want to thank
Yep.
you for coming on again. I know you're busy with all the stuff that you're doing right now, but you're a true servant. And when you talked about your purpose and your passion, they're both about serving others. They're always about serving others, and that's your whole life, and that's your gift. And your gift is giving to others. And I just thank you so much. You've been a great mentor to me, and we'll be in touch soon. But thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the People Progressing Podcast. I'm Joe White. You can get my book on Amazon, or you can get on my website, coachjoewhiteconsulting.com, and you can get my book. You can get a hold of me through my website to come speak to your group, work with you individually, life coach you, whatever you need. I can be there and I can help you. You can also get a hold of me through my email. It's coachjoewhite97@gmail.com. Thank you for listening today. Tell this to share this with your friends. And I'm not a professional or anything like that, but I just want to get out and inspire people. So please share this with your friend. Get on, download, subscribe, and spread the word. Thank you so much.